little sister wanted to talk to Billy Bob.
Hi, my name's Aaron.
Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Well, she really did.
Yeah.
And we watched some far-out videos and ate some awesome pizza. So if you're looking for a lot of fun for the whole family, just check out ShowBiz Pizza.
Yeah.
How did one of the biggest birthday destinations of the 1980s completely disappear, while its biggest rival not only survived, but also took all the credit? Now, for millions of kids growing up during the 1980s, there was no better place to celebrate a birthday. The arcade games were everywhere, the pizza smelled amazing, but the real stars weren't the games or the food. They were a band of wisecracking animatronic animals performing rock songs on stage while crowds of kids watched in amazement. This was ShowBiz Pizza Place, and for a brief period, it was one of the fastest-growing family entertainment chains in America. Its animatronic band, the rock-afire explosion, became legendary among kids who visited its restaurants. And in many markets, ShowBiz wasn't just competing with Chuck E. Cheese, it was beating it. And then it just vanished. The signs disappeared, the characters disappeared, and even the name disappeared. And today, many younger people have never even heard of ShowBiz Pizza. So what happened? Well, the answer involves one of the strangest corporate rivalries in entertainment history. A bitter legal battle, a devastating industry crash, and a business decision that effectively erased an entire brand from existence. Now, to understand the rise of ShowBiz Pizza, you first have to understand the world it entered. You see, during the late 1970s, arcades were booming. Video games were becoming a cultural phenomenon, and entrepreneurs were searching for ways to combine entertainment, food, and family experiences into something larger than a traditional restaurant. And one person who was paying close attention was Robert L. Brock. Now, Brock was already a highly successful hotel franchise operator when he became interested in a growing concept called Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater. Created by Atari founder Nolan Bushnell, Chuck E. Cheese combined arcade games, pizza, and animatronic characters into one experience. And at first, Brock loved the idea. In fact, he signed an agreement to open hundreds of Chuck E. Cheese locations. But then something changed. Brock became concerned that Chuck E. Cheese's animatronics weren't advanced enough. And around that same time, he learned about an inventor named Aaron Fechter, who was developing a much more sophisticated animatronic show through his company, Creative Engineering. Now, Brock saw an opportunity. Instead of helping expand Chuck E. Cheese, he decided to create his own competing chain. And that decision would launch one of the most unusual rivalries of the decade. In 1980, the first ShowBiz Pizza Place opened in Kansas City, Missouri, and the response was immediate. Kids loved it, parents loved it, and the secret weapon was standing right on the stage. The rock-afire explosion wasn't just another collection of robotic characters. At the time, it represented some of the most advanced animatronic technology ever installed in a family restaurant. The band featured characters like Billy Bob Broccoli, Fats Geronimo, Mitzi Mozzarella, Beach Bear, Duke LaRue, and Looney Bird, and each character had distinct personalities, voices, and musical roles. But what truly separated them from competitors was how lifelike they felt. Powered by sophisticated pneumatic systems, the characters could perform complex movements, facial expressions, comedy routines, and musical numbers with a level of realism that absolutely amazed audiences. And for many kids, the rock-afire explosion wasn't a side attraction, it was the reason to visit. The combination of pizza, arcade games, and cutting-edge animatronics proved irresistible. ShowBiz expanded rapidly throughout the early 1980s, opening locations across the country and building a loyal fan base. But while ShowBiz was growing, its biggest competitor wasn't standing still. Chuck E. Cheese had a major advantage. It was there first. Now, before ShowBiz ever opened its doors, Chuck E. Cheese had already changed the restaurant industry. Nolan Bushnell's concept of combining food, arcade games, and animatronics created an entirely new category of family entertainment. And by the time ShowBiz entered the market, Chuck E. Cheese was already a recognizable brand. And that created a fierce rivalry. And it wasn't just happening in restaurants, it was happening in courtrooms too. When Robert Brock abandoned his Chuck E. Cheese franchise agreement to launch ShowBiz, Nolan Bushnell wasn't very happy. Pizza Time Theater sued Brock for breach of contract. Brock responded with illegal claims of his own, arguing that Bushnell had misrepresented aspects of the business. The legal battle became very messy. Eventually, the dispute was resolved in favor of Pizza Time Theater, and the settlement came with serious consequences. According to various reports and fan research, ShowBiz was required to pay a portion of its profits to its rival. And that meant every successful ShowBiz location was helping fund Chuck E. Cheese. The arrangement became a constant financial burden. Now, from the outside, ShowBiz looked unstoppable. Inside, it was carrying a costly disadvantage. But still, the company continued growing. And for a while, it seemed like the success of the rock-afire explosion might be enough to overcome everything else. And then, the video game industry crashed. The famous video game crash of 1983 devastated arcades across America. Since arcade games generated a significant portion of revenue for both chains, the effects were immediate. Suddenly, both companies faced financial pressure. But Chuck E. Cheese actually suffered more. And in 1984, Pizza Time Theatre filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. For ShowBiz, this looked like a victory. Its biggest rival was collapsing. And then, something completely unexpected happened. Instead of watching Chuck E. Cheese disappear, ShowBiz bought it. In 1985, ShowBiz acquired the assets of the bankrupt Pizza Time Theatre and merged the two companies into a new organization called ShowBiz Pizza Time. Now, the rivals were now under the same roof, and for a few years, both brands continued operating separately. Customers could still visit ShowBiz locations and watch the rock-afire explosion. Chuck E. Cheese locations still featured their own animatronic cast. But running two separate brands created inefficiencies. Executives wanted one identity, one mascot, one system. And that decision eventually led to the destruction of ShowBiz itself. Because the biggest obstacle was Aaron Fechter. Although ShowBiz owned the physical animatronic hardware in its restaurants, Fechter still controlled the rights to the rock-afire explosion characters. The company wanted full ownership. Fechter refused. He believed the characters had value beyond pizza restaurants and wasn't willing to give them up. And that refusal forced executives to make a difficult choice. If they couldn't own the characters, they would replace them. The project became known as Concept Unification. And for longtime fans, it remains one of the most heartbreaking moments in family entertainment history. So beginning around 1990, technicians traveled from location to location dismantling rock-afire explosion stages. The robotic skeletons remained in place, but the characters themselves were removed. Billy Bob disappeared, Fats disappeared, Mitzi disappeared, Beach Bear disappeared. Their faces, costumes, and personalities were stripped away and replaced with redesigned Chuck E. Cheese characters. The same robots continued performing, but they were no longer the rock-afire explosion. And by the early 1990s, most ShowBiz locations had been converted. The ShowBiz name disappeared. Every remaining location became Chuck E. Cheese. The challenger that once threatened to overtake the king had been completely absorbed. Its identity was erased, at least officially. Because while the restaurants vanished, the memories didn't. For many people, ShowBiz became something more than a restaurant chain. It became a symbol of childhood. And nowhere was that nostalgia stronger than with the rock-afire explosion. Aaron Fechter retained ownership of the characters and continued preserving them long after ShowBiz disappeared. As locations closed and old animatronics were removed, collectors began rescuing surviving sets. And then, something remarkable happened. A new generation discovered them. During the late 2000s, videos of restored rock-afire explosion characters performing modern songs started appearing online. And one of the most famous examples came from collector Chris Thrash, whose animatronics performed contemporary pop music in videos that quickly spread across the internet. Millions of people suddenly encountered these strange singing animals for the first time. And what began as nostalgia transformed into a cultural phenomenon. Documentaries followed, fan communities grew, collectors spent years restoring surviving animatronics. Today, only a small number of complete rock-afire explosion shows still exist, but their legacy remains surprisingly strong. And that says something important about ShowBiz Pizza, because despite losing the corporate battle, it won something else. It became unforgettable. So what caused the rise and fall of ShowBiz Pizza? Well, the rise came from incredible timing, innovative entertainment, and the technical brilliance of the rock-afire explosion. The company created an experience that felt magical to an entire generation of kids. But the fall came from legal battles, industry changes, financial pressures, and ultimately a corporate merger that made the brand redundant. But unlike many forgotten companies, ShowBiz never truly disappeared, because every time someone hears the name Billy Bob Broccoli, every time a restored rock-afire explosion show performs, every time someone remembers a childhood birthday spent watching singing animatronic animals, a small piece of ShowBiz Pizza comes back to life. And that's why, decades later, people still remember a restaurant chain that officially stopped existing more than 30 years ago.